Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. They thought I'd be easy to ignore, just a quiet man on a forgotten ridge. But when a gated community tried to steal my land with fake maps, secret trails, and a smile, they didn't expect a retired federal agent who knows how to fight back. This isn't just property, it's war. I didn't move to the mountains for the view, although waking up every morning to a horizon lined with peaks instead of power lines has its perks. I came here to disappear. After 20 years in federal service, most of them chasing down land fraud rings and easement rackets from Louisiana to Alaska, I wanted silence, trees, and the kind of solitude that doesn't need to ask permission. So, when I bought an abandoned pasture just outside Gunnison, Colorado, all 320 acres of it, I made sure every inch of that land was mine, clean and clear. 2 surveyors, a private notary, and a county clerk made sure of that. No HOA, no neighbors. No problem. The first few months felt like I'd finally cheated the system. A man who made a living reading fine print, now living beyond it. I rebuilt the fence along the northern ridge, cut a new road through the old logging trail, and set up motion-triggered cameras along the perimeter. I patched up the decaying barn, fitted a steel lock to the front gate, and poured concrete for a solar-powered well house. It wasn't just a ranch, it was therapy with trees. When I wasn't working, I'd sit on the porch with coffee in hand and not hear another human being for days. That's how I liked it. That's how it was supposed to be, until the tire tracks appeared. I first noticed them after an early snow melted, shallow grooves on the road leading up to my south entrance, ones I hadn't made. I keep my own tracks sharp and wide, thanks to the dually Ford I drive. These were narrower, spaced like a crossover or maybe an SUV. At first I figured it was a lost hunter or someone cutting through by mistake. But then they came back, again and again. And every time I filled the ruts with gravel, they reappeared within days. I reviewed the trail cams. Sure enough, a shiny white Jeep, 2-tone license plate, roof rack, cruising up my private access road like it was a goddamn parkway. They didn't stop, didn't knock, didn't turn around. Just passed through and disappeared beyond the trees. That pissed me off more than I expected, not because of the trespass, I'd seen worse in my career, but because of the confidence. The assumption, like whoever it was, figured no one lived up here, or if someone did, they'd be too quiet or too old to care. So I decided to find out where they were coming from. I launched the drone from the ridge above the South Road, a custom-built quadcopter with thermal imaging and a 2-hour flight time. I traced the Jeep's path downhill, over a couple ridge lines, and across a clearing. That's when I saw it. A brand new development, maybe 30-40 houses, all with identical siding, American flags waving from porches, and driveways shaped like tongues. It looked like suburbia had sprouted in the wilderness, a place that didn't belong this far up. I zoomed in. There was a banner near the main entrance, strung between 2 lodge poles. Welcome to Mountain Gate Meadows, a private gated community figures. I flew the drone further, caught a glimpse of a tennis court, a tot lot, and something that looked like a community pool under construction. Right beyond the cul-de-sac was my land. And I mean that literally. They had built within 20 feet of my southern fence. And the road they were using? The one I bulldozed and leveled myself with a rented grader and 3 gallons of diesel. They were treating it like their personal shortcut. I reviewed the original purchase deed. The map showed clearly the only road leading into my property was the one I carved through the forest. No easement, no shared access. The nearest county road was 1.5 miles down the ridge. Their development must have been cut around the edge, boxed in by geography and poor planning, which explained why they were using mine. I could have ignored it, put up a new gate, let the cameras log plates and deal with it quietly, but I knew these people, not personally, but professionally. The HOA types, the kind who believed every tree should be approved, every mailbox standardized. I'd investigated enough of them to know how they operated. They never ask first. They move in like fog, slow, creeping, and full of entitlement. So, when the silver Lexus showed up at my gate the next week, driven by a sharply dressed woman with a clipboard, a pearl necklace, and the smile of someone who's never been told no, I wasn't surprised. She stepped out like she owned the soil beneath her shoes and waved to my trail cam before buzzing the intercom. I watched her from my front porch, sipping coffee as her voice crackled through the speaker. "Hello? Mr. Blight, is it? Camden Blight. My name's Karen Laurie. I'm the president of the Mountain Gate Meadows Homeowners Association. We'd love to have a quick chat. It's about shared community interests. I nearly spat my coffee. Instead, I walked down the gravel, buzzed open the gate, and stood there, waiting. She approached with the calm assurance of a woman used to deals going her way. "I'll keep it short," she said sweetly. "Some of our residents have been using this road. It's the most efficient access point. Our HOA would like to offer you membership, actually. Honorary, of course. That way, your property benefits from the same services. Snow plowing, security patrols, even landscaping if you'd like." I just stared at her, then asked, "You offering to plow my land or take it?" She blinked. "Excuse me." I smiled, just enough to be polite. "I'm not interested. This land is private. No access, no HOA, no shared anything. You're welcome to inform your residents. Have a nice day." To her credit, she didn't show anger. Not yet. She handed me a glossy trifold brochure and said, "We can discuss options later. I'm sure we'll find a solution that works for everyone." I tossed the brochure onto the hood of her Lexus, turned around, and walked back toward the house. But as I stepped onto my porch, I already knew that wasn't the last I'd see of her. 3 days after Karen Laurie's little driveway diplomacy stunt, I found something new in my mailbox. A padded envelope, unmarked except for a return address that read Mountain Gate Meadows HOA. Inside was a manila folder stuffed with laminated maps, a copy of their community charter, a letter inviting me to a non-voting affiliate membership, and, the real kicker, a printed map showing my road labeled as Community Trail Access, East. Gate in bold red letters. I sat at my kitchen table reading that map with the kind of disbelief usually reserved for flat earth pamphlets. They hadn't just suggested my land was part of their community, they had already incorporated it. Like drawing a crown on your neighbor's cat and calling it royalty. I opened the drawer, pulled out the original cadastral overlay from the county, and laid the two side by side. The HOA's version showed the road on my land extending through my southern trail and labeled with dotted lines as if it had been publicly granted. There was no legend, no footnotes, just red lines and self-importance. I scanned everything into my legal archive, filed it under pre-litigation idiocy, and got to work. First, I drove my truck down to the gate and removed the aging padlock. In its place, I installed a keypad-locked steel gate, reinforced with a drop bar that would stop anything short of a tank. Mounted motion sensor lights went up on either side. I printed new signs. Private road, no trespassing, not affiliated with any HOA. Then I installed a brand new trail cam, hidden in a tree limb across the ridge. This one streamed directly to my phone. By the time I was done, it looked less like a backwoods driveway and more like the demilitarized zone between sanity and suburban tyranny. The next afternoon, just as I was finishing a round of welding on the barn's door latch, I heard gravel crunching. I checked the feed. Sure enough, it was Karen again, only this time she didn't come alone. 2 men in cheap black polos with the HOA logo embroidered on the chest followed her up the trail in a white SUV. When the gate didn't open, they parked just short of it, stepped out, and walked right up like they owned the place. Karen approached the intercom. I let her wait 10 seconds before answering. "This is Camden," I said. "Make it quick." Her voice had lost all its sugary tones. "Mr. Blight, this gate is obstructing a designated community access road. The board has already voted on the matter. We're asking you to remove it immediately." I let a beat pass. "Karen, there's no board on earth that can override a notarized deed and a county land office map. You've got the wrong land and the wrong guy." One of her security goons stepped forward. "If you don't comply, we're authorized to remove the obstruction ourselves." I let out a dry laugh. "Try it. This property is under active surveillance. Tamper with that gate, and you'll meet the sheriff before you make it to your car." There was a pause. Karen leaned closer to the mic. "This isn't over," she hissed, and turned on her heel. I watched from the trail cam as they walked back to the SUV. As they drove away, I saw one of the men toss something out of the window. When I went to check later, I found a laminated HOA notice of violation lying in the dirt like a dead squirrel. That evening, I posted a short letter to the HOA's official address. "Dear Ms. Laurie, your continued mischaracterization of my private property as community access is factually and legally false. Any further attempts to access my land without permission will be documented and treated as trespass. Enclosed, for your convenience, are notarized documents confirming that my land is not, and has never been, part of Mountain Gate Meadows or any associated HOA. Do not contact me again except through counsel. Regards, Camden Blight. I included copies of the original deed, boundary survey, and my statement from the county zoning board, all neatly tabbed. I paid extra for tracking and signature confirmation. 2 days later, the sheriff showed up. It was early morning when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel and looked up to see a marked cruiser stopping near my mailbox. Out stepped Deputy Thomas, a man I'd met once at the local hardware store when he asked if I was the guy rebuilding the old Johnson pasture. He made his way up the trail slowly, hands visible, posture neutral, the kind of approach you take when you're visiting someone who might legally own a sniper rifle. Morning, he said, tipping his hat. Got a call from the HOA down the ridge. Said you were blocking a public access road. Figured I'd come check for myself. I nodded toward the porch. You want coffee or paperwork? Paperwork, he said, smiling faintly. We sat at my kitchen table for 20 minutes. I showed him everything. Deed, tax records, zoning map overlays, even a photo of the road before I rebuilt it. He listened without rushing, flipping through the documents like a man who'd been dragged into more than one HOA squabble before. When he finally closed the folder, he said, "Looks pretty cut and dry to me. This is your road. Not public, not shared, not easemented. Just you." I nodded. "Glad we agree." He scratched his neck. "Karen Laurie's been active, let's say. Had a few complaints already this year, but yours is the first time she's tried to redraw county lines." Before he left, I handed him a USB stick. Trail cam footage. Her people threatened to forcibly remove my gate. Figured that might be relevant later. He slipped it into his pocket. "I'll keep this on file. For now, you're in the clear. Just keep documenting everything. And maybe invest in some heavier locks." Already did. He tipped his hat again and left. I stood at the window for a long time, watching the cruiser vanish down the trail. Something told me that Karen wasn't done. The HOA didn't wait long to make their next move. It was barely a week after Deputy Thomas confirmed everything was above board when a new envelope arrived, this one certified, with an official-looking seal and a return address, not from the HOA, but from something called the Regional Community Boundary Integration Council. I'd never heard of it, and the title already stank of made-up authority. Inside was a formal notice of a proposed revision to community mapping boundaries, accompanied by, you guessed it, a new map. This one was even more absurd than the last. It showed my southern access road marked not only as community trail access, but as part of a planned Greenbelt Connector initiative linking Mountain Gate Meadows to a future network of recreational trails and wildlife observation points. In other words, they were trying to pitch my land as a public park. There were hand-drawn notes in red pen along the bottom margins. Pending HOA vote. Coordinate with County Works Department. And, in Karen's familiar cursive scrawl, the words, "He won't use it anyway." Might as well make it beneficial to the neighborhood. I stared at that sentence longer than I'd like to admit. That evening, I walked the southern fence line. The wind was picking up, and the last light of day scraped across the ridge like a blade. That's when I saw it. A brand new sign bolted into one of my pine trees, right where the old trail veered onto my property. It was made of engraved plastic, HOA colors, clean and professional. It read, "Private Trail, for residents only, Mountain Gate Meadows HOA." My blood didn't boil. Not yet. This wasn't rage. This was something colder. I pulled out my phone, took photos from 3 angles, and logged the GPS coordinates. Then I hiked up to the old fire watch point where I kept my drone launch station. Within minutes, I had the quadcopter in the air, following the ridgeline down toward the HOA's side. That's when I saw them. A small group of people, maybe 6 or 7, gathered just past the southern gate on my side. Fold-out chairs, coffee thermoses. One guy had a tablet, another had what looked like a measuring tape. And there was Karen, front and center, holding a clipboard and gesturing toward my trees like a realtor about to list the view. I zoomed in with the drone's camera and hit record. No one had seen it yet, not until Karen looked up. I'll never forget the look on her face when she locked eyes with a flying machine hovering 50 feet above her head, glowing red in the dusk. She knew she was being recorded. She turned and said something to the others. And that's when the man with the tablet yanked out a measuring pole and started packing up. The footage was good. Very good. I had everything I needed. By the next morning, I'd prepared a full documentation packet, drone footage, GPS-stamped trail cam photos, and a notarized affidavit I wrote and signed myself, confirming unauthorized signage and trespassing. I emailed it to both my attorney, a woman named Emily Copeland, a sharp, no-bullshit land use lawyer I'd worked with in the past, and to the county land office. Emily called me 20 minutes later. "You've got them," she said. "That sign alone is criminal trespass. The fake boundary council? That's mail fraud if they passed it off as official, and Karen Laurie's handwritten notes. Chef's kiss. You ready to take this public? I'm ready to burn it down and salt the earth." She laughed, but only a little. "Let me handle the fire. You just document everything else, and don't respond to them. Not verbally, not physically. You're a target now." That evening, I drove back down to the gate and checked the trail cam. Sure enough, someone had tampered with it. The lens had been smeared with something, Vaseline maybe, and there were boot prints near the base. But they hadn't seen the second camera tucked higher in the branches. That one caught the whole thing. A tall man in hiking boots, no mask, no gloves, walking up and deliberately blurring the first cam with his thumb. His face was crystal clear. I isolated the footage, sent it to Emily, and added it to my now rapidly growing digital vault. I also flagged it to Deputy Thomas with a short email. Subject: additional trespassing activity. Footage attached. Please advise if escalation protocol is warranted. He responded within the hour. Got it. That's a resident named Clay Denson, HOA board treasurer. We'll be paying him a visit. You want to press charges? I told him yes. Later that night, I was walking the fence line again when I found something else, something that hit differently. A small black camera, not mine, taped inside the hollow of a tree, aimed inward toward my clearing. A wireless unit, battery pack still warm. I stood there staring at it, breathing slowly. This wasn't HOA anymore. This was surveillance. I didn't touch it. Instead, I took photos, logged the position, and walked away like I hadn't seen a thing. I wanted it undisturbed for the sheriff's office. But I knew what this meant. They weren't just testing boundaries anymore. They were planning something. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was scared. I've dealt with cartels that used fake churches to launder land titles. I've stared down sovereign citizens with backyard militias. I've walked into a compound in Arizona where the only way out was through the front gate or a pine box. But this was different. Not louder, not more dangerous, just slippery. These people weren't trying to intimidate me. They were trying to absorb me, like a parasite convinces the host it belongs there. By morning, I'd already prepared a new evidence package, one that included time-stamped footage of the camera I found in the tree. I left it untouched, exactly where it was, and marked the coordinates for law enforcement. Then I did something I hadn't done since retiring. I deployed surveillance of my own. That afternoon, I hiked out to the forest boundary with a gear bag slung over my back and 2 hours of battery life on my thermal drone. I wanted to see if they'd come back, not just to the gate, but past it. I climbed the Firewatch platform I'd refurbished last spring, laid out a camouflage blanket, and watched the feed on my tablet. They came at dusk. 3 people, 2 men, 1 woman, all mid-40s to 50s, HOA type, polos and jeans, clipboards, flashlights. They weren't sightseeing. They were pacing out distances, marking trees with fluorescent tape, taking photos. The woman even pulled out a foldable yard sign, one of those future site-of-style real estate signs, and planted it 10 feet inside my fence line. The words were barely visible, but I caught enough. Proposed community lookout. My patient snapped clean in two. I called the sheriff's department and reported trespassing in progress. Then I hopped in the truck and took the lower trail, headlights off, engine low. I parked 200 yards from the southern ridge and approached on foot, silently, like I had in a dozen sting ops back in the day. By the time I reached the clearing, the trio was still there, chatting like it was a Sunday picnic. "Evening," I said, stepping into the light. They froze. The woman dropped her clipboard. "This is private land," I said calmly, phone already recording in my hand. "You're trespassing. The sheriff is on his way. I suggest you wait here." One of the men, short and sweaty with a salt and pepper beard, tried puffing up. "We were told this was common access." "By whom?" He hesitated. The woman answered instead. "Mrs. Laurie said the board approved a temporary scouting visit for community development. No harm intended. You're 10 yards onto my property with a real estate sign and survey tape. That's more than harm." That's attempted land fraud. The man stepped forward. Hey, don't go throwing around. I cut him off. I know what this is. I've spent 2 decades prosecuting exactly this kind of stunt. HOA boards trying to establish implied access by repeated use. You're softening the ground, creating a record. The third one, tall, silent until now, looked between us and said flatly, "We should go." "No," I said. "You're going to wait. The deputy will want to talk to you." They didn't argue. That was smart. Within 15 minutes, 2 cruisers pulled up. Not just Deputy Thomas this time, but also a younger officer named Marinelli. The HOA group tried to spin their story. Confusion over maps, a miscommunication, a harmless planning session. I handed Thomas the footage, the photos, the boundary overlay. Marinelli looked like he wanted to slap someone. "We've warned them before," Thomas muttered to me as the group stood awkwardly near the sign they'd planted. "You warned her," I corrected. "Now they're acting as agents of the board." Thomas nodded. "I'll take their statements. But this is getting above my pay grade." The next morning, I woke up to find the trail cam feed had been wiped, corrupted somehow. Not just blurred, deleted. I checked the backup. Also gone. That told me something even more alarming. Someone had gotten close enough to access the cam's onboard storage. This wasn't trespassing anymore. It was reconnaissance. I met with Emily in town that afternoon. Showed her everything. Her reaction was immediate. "We're filing. Full civil complaint, trespassing, unauthorized signage, harassment, boundary interference, and we'll open the door to criminal charges too. You ready to be a plaintiff?" "I've been building the war chest," I said. "Time to spend it." She started drafting the complaint the same day. That night, as I was finishing a perimeter check, I caught movement on the ridge. Not headlights, not people, a drone. Someone else was flying one now. Smaller than mine, commercial grade. It hovered for a moment, then zipped away toward the HOA development. They were watching me now. Good. Let them watch. By the time Emily filed the complaint, I already had motion sensors set up along the southern trail and a new encrypted storage system for my cameras. I wasn't just documenting anymore. I was baiting them. The footage from the drone I saw last night turned up online 2 days later. A short clip posted anonymously on a local HOA Facebook group titled "Uncooperative Ranch Owner Endangers Community Trail Access." The video showed only a cropped view of my gate and fence, overlaid with dramatic captions. "Barricaded trail," "hostile to residents," and "development blocked by single owner." Comments poured in, parroting HOA talking points. "He should just share. He doesn't even use the road. Why is one man holding back progress?" Karen's fingerprints were all over it. I'd seen her PR tactics before. Turn public opinion, twist facts, weaponize perception. This wasn't about land anymore. It was about narrative. I wasn't about to play defense. That same evening, my new private security contractor arrived, a man named Julian Vega, ex-deputy from Santa Fe County, now running his own licensed land protection outfit. He didn't wear camo or talk tough, but the guy had presence. Calm, direct, no wasted words. "You expecting armed conflict?" he asked, scanning the ridgeline. "No," I said. "Just entitled suburban warfare." He chuckled. "Good. My rates go up for bullets." I gave Julian access to the interior gate and showed him where I'd already marked hotspots from prior incidents. He reviewed everything: drone clips, trespass footage, screenshots from the HOA group. Then he pointed to the spot near the southern fence where the fake lookout site sign had been. "They'll be back here," he said. "Soon. Probably with something that looks just official enough to scare you." 2 nights later, he was proven right. Julian caught an SUV trying to come through the lower gate after dusk. A man behind the wheel flashed what looked like a permit. Julian wasn't impressed. "What's this for?" he asked, flipping the paper under his flashlight. The guy hesitated. "HOA Development Department. Approved observation rights. We're authorized to inspect for ecological integration." Julian raised an eyebrow. "You realize you're on private property? And that this form is 3 years old and missing a stamp." The guy blinked. "We were told." "Don't care," Julian said. "You're trespassing. Back out or wait for county deputies." The SUV backed out. I reviewed the footage that night. The permit was laughably bad, printed from an outdated county website, with an altered footer and a forged signature from a real employee who hadn't worked there since 1929. A deeper look revealed something even juicier. The document was filed that morning in the HOA document repository, labeled as Shared Community Permit, Blight Parcel Corridor Blight. My land. These people were out of their minds. I called Emily the next morning. She was already one step ahead. Camden, she said, they just filed a copy of that permit with the county registrar's office. Not the real planning department, just the deed desk. They're trying to create the illusion of county recognition. My stomach turned. They're laying down paperwork. Yup, hoping it sits unchallenged long enough to imply consent. Classic quiet title preparation. But we've already flagged it, and I've got a friend in the recorder's office. We'll issue a counterclaim and notify the DA. The next part came fast. 2 days after that call, I got a knock on my gate. A county land use inspector. Legit badge, legitimate authority. He was apologetic from the start. Mr. Blythe, sorry to bother you, sir. We received a complaint about unlawful obstruction of a mapped public access route. Got a request for inspection from an HOA entity. I'm required to at least verify. I nodded, kept calm. You're being used. I figured, he said. You mind showing me the documents? I gave him everything. The notarized title, boundary survey, GPS overlays, video logs, and the falsified documents the HOA had been circulating. He reviewed it all on his tablet, eyes going wide. Jesus, they really thought this would work. They still think it will. I'll be filing a formal report, he said. You'll get a copy. And I'll recommend an investigation into fraudulent filings. Later that night, Julian called me out to the trailhead. He'd found something. A bundle of survey stakes, new ones, not county issued, hidden under a tarp beside the trail. Each one was tagged with orange ribbons marked MGMHOA Corridor South. It was clear what they were planning. An unsanctioned fake easement path. If they planted it and photographed it, they could show use in progress to bolster their claim. I took the stakes, loaded them into the back of my truck, and drove them straight to the county land office with a signed affidavit and Julian's footage as proof. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was dismantling their strategy before it launched. I knew they weren't done. People like Karen don't retreat. They regroup. That's the most dangerous part of this kind of war, when it gets quiet, when people stop knocking, stop driving up to the gate, stop commenting on HOA message boards. That's when you start looking at the treetops, not the trail. That's when you get the sense they've found another angle, one that doesn't rely on permission. It came on a Thursday morning, just before sunrise. Julian was the one who spotted it first. Tire tracks in the soft dirt, just beyond the northern ravine. Not the southern trail this time. Not the old road. The north ridge. Steeper, narrower, covered in brush. It wasn't marked as a primary entry point because there was no road there. Or at least, there hadn't been. We hiked up to the ridge and found a shockingly well-cut trail. Brush cleared, stones removed, even a few pieces of fresh gravel laid down. It ran maybe 100 yards along the edge of my property, then cut sharply downward toward the back end of the HOA community. They were building a secret trail, a bypass, something they could pretend had always existed. And they were doing it off books, no permits, no survey flags, no recorded access. It was an easement heist in progress. I took photos, GPS markers, video logs. Then I climbed down the slope, boots crunching soft dirt, until I reached the property line. There, tucked into the base of a tree, was a small wooden post with a laminated sheet nailed to it. Community Access Path, Do Not Disturb, under review by Mountain Gate Meadows, HOA Planning Board. I stared at that sign for a long moment, then pulled out my phone and hit record. This is Camden Blythe. I am standing at the northern boundary of Parcel 47, private property registered under my name, GPS verified, with no easements on record. This path is unauthorized. This sign is unauthorized. And anyone crossing this point will be considered in violation of state trespass law. I emailed the file to Emily with one line of text. They've escalated. Her reply came fast. We're amending the suit. Add constructive trespass, malicious encroachment, and intent to mislead a public office. I'll get a surveyor out there by Monday. Julian and I didn't wait. We set up trail cameras along the ridge path, camouflaged with bark wraps and pine needles, one on each curve, one overhead, one aimed directly at the fake sign. Then we left. Didn't touch a thing. Didn't mark our presence. Let them think it was working. And, oh boy, did it ever. That weekend, the cams captured 8 separate crossings. HOA members, some alone, some in pairs, a couple even with kids, walking the new trail like it was a Sunday hike. They took pictures, pointed out spots. One guy even had a clipboard. They weren't hiding it. But the real jackpot came on Sunday afternoon. Karen herself, flanked by two younger men in business casual. One of them had a measuring wheel. The other had a drone. They were mapping the path. Karen paused in front of the sign, nodded toward it, then looked directly at the drone and said, "This will look amazing in the newsletter." They need to see what they're missing. I smiled so wide, I nearly dropped the tablet. The footage wasn't just gold, it was platinum. Emily was ecstatic. This is full-on evidence of malicious expansion. Combined with your deed and the footage of them trespassing from two directions, we've got a pattern. They're manufacturing access points to claim precedent. The next move had to be bold. We called in Marcus Thorne, an independent land surveyor with 23 years of field credibility and courtroom testimony experience. He wasn't cheap, but nothing worth doing is. Marcus came out on Wednesday, hiked the full perimeter, documented everything with LiDAR and GPS overlays, and by Friday had a full-color topographic report showing no existing public access on record and two unauthorized trail cuts that clearly violated my deed's boundary. Then he hit me with the best part. They're not just building access, he said. They're doing it in a way that avoids detection. See this angle here? They're running it along the tree line, where satellite imagery can't pick up new disturbance unless you adjust the contrast manually. It's designed to age quickly. Once the grass grows over it, it'll look established. So it's camouflage. Exactly. A visual lie. That same day, Julian intercepted another HOA member, this time inside the boundary near the old dry creek bed. She was startled, claimed to be exploring, then handed over a folded map labeled Community Connectivity Plan, Revision 2. Emily's jaw dropped when she saw it. They're drawing in trails that don't exist. This is preemptive retroactive falsification. If this gets submitted and nobody catches it in time, they'll point to it as proof of long-standing shared use. It's a land grab, Camden. Full stop. We didn't sleep that night. I wasn't dealing with suburban overreach anymore. I was staring down a calculated step-by-step invasion, not by force, but by bureaucratic illusion. So I prepared my own next move. I spent the morning printing large signs, not passive warnings, but bold legal statements. Private property, no public access, video monitored, county map on file. I laminated each one, mounted them on thick wooden boards, and posted them at every entrance, including the new ridge trail. Then I dropped a formal notice at the county recorder's office. Photographic evidence, GPS overlays, the surveyor's map, and a notarized declaration contesting all false HOA filings. By evening, I received confirmation that a fraud investigation had been opened at the county level. Someone at the recorder's office flagged the Connectivity Plan Revision 2 as suspicious. Probably the same person Emily tipped off. We were finally ahead of them, but only just. That weekend, it escalated again. Julian spotted a man in a reflective vest walking near the new signs. He claimed to be a state inspector, but refused to show ID. When pressed, he left, fast. We reviewed footage and caught a glimpse of his car's plate, registered to a landscaping company, owned by Karen's nephew. Emily filed a cease and desist letter to the HOA citing criminal impersonation. That same day, I received a letter in my mailbox, not through mail, but hand-delivered, a notice from the Mountain Gate Meadows Legal Committee demanding arbitration over shared use rights for the road and the ridge path. I laughed out loud. They weren't even pretending anymore. Emily was less amused. This is bait. If you respond even to decline, they'll claim you acknowledged the dispute. That gives them grounds to pursue mediation and claim jurisdiction, so I ignored it and doubled down. I installed floodlights with motion sensors at both illegal trail entrances, not just for security, but for footage. I knew they'd come again, and they did. At night, two masked individuals appeared on the drone feed, attempting to remove my signs. One carried bolt cutters. The other had a can of black spray paint. Before they could touch anything, Julian arrived, headlights flooding the trail. They ran, but the drone tracked them through the tree line and caught where they exited, right at the HOA Greenbelt fence. The next morning, we submitted that footage to the sheriff's department and the DA's office, along with all the previous evidence. That same afternoon, I held a press briefing. Local news stations had already picked up bits of the story thanks to social media. I gave them the whole thing. Maps, videos, signs, statements. I stood in front of my gate and said, "This is not a shared space. This is a privately owned, surveyed, and protected ranch, and I will not be bullied out of it. By nightfall, the HOA's Facebook page went into lockdown. Karen posted a single statement. "We believe in community cooperation and will pursue all legal avenues to ensure safe access for our residents." Julian smirked when he read it. Translation: "We got caught, but we'll keep trying." But now the tide was turning. The sheriff's office confirmed an active criminal probe into forged documents and trespass activity, and I had one final move left. The court date came faster than I expected. Between Emily's filings and the DA's sudden interest in criminal charges, the civil case accelerated. The courtroom was packed. Press, locals, even a few Mountain Gate residents who clearly weren't on Karen's side anymore. I wore a clean flannel and jeans like I always do. Emily wore fire. We opened with Marcus Thorne's survey. Projected on a screen, he walked the judge through every boundary line, LiDAR readout, and GPS trail, showing how the HOA had cut across my property and altered public records to match. Then came the footage. Karen directing people down the secret trail, residents placing new signage, the drone capturing masked trespassers, the fake state inspector near the ridge. Emily presented the notarized deeds, the public notice filings, and a recorded statement from a former HOA board member who flipped, said Karen and a contractor had drawn up a connectivity plan, knowing it would eventually be used to pressure me into ceding land access. Karen's attorney tried to play it off as a misunderstanding. My client believed the road had historic usage. Any trail activity was the result of communal assumptions. Emily fired back. Then explain the forged county filing. Explain the false inspector. Explain why your client installed unauthorized surveillance cameras on a property she claims isn't hers. The judge didn't need much time. Verdict: the HOA must remove all signage, trails, markers, and cameras from my property within 30 days. They owe me $380,000 in damages for trespass, surveillance, and legal costs. Karen was referred for criminal prosecution for submitting falsified access documents to a government office. I didn't smile, I didn't gloat, but I did shake the judge's hand. The next day, I began sealing the borders. I hired a contractor to install reinforced automatic steel gates with buried concrete footings, floodlights, 2 extra cameras. Julian helped me laser etch metal signs. Private land, no access. Violators will be prosecuted under Colorado state law. Karen resigned. The HOA board issued a statement blaming poor oversight and misinformation. Residents weren't happy, especially after they learned that the alternate road construction, needed now that my land was closed off, would cost them over $1 million from the HOA reserve fund. 3 board members stepped down. A 4th moved away. I published a digital copy of my land map online. It was marked with one bold caption: "When in doubt, check the deed," not someone's agenda. Now my mornings are quiet again. Just the wind, the trees, and the crunch of gravel under my boots as I walk a road I built on land I own, with no HOA signs in sight. And at the gate, hanging from a clean chain-link mount, is the final touch. The old lock Karen once tried to cut, now rusted and welded shut. A little reminder, some lines aren't meant to be crossed.